Good evening, waifus and husbandos, and welcome back to another episode of the WaifuCast podcast. We are your hosts. I am, of course, Lunakage, and the man sitting here to my right is Orifice.
I'm on his left.
I mean, it'd be their right if they were looking at us, though.
But I'm still to your left.
My left.
You said to your right. The man to my right.
No, I'm right.
Well, welcome. Welcome.
Welcome.
We are, the WaifuCast.
We are the WaifuCast. That's what I did say at one point.
Or another.
Or, yeah.
So today, we're going to talk to you guys about elitism. Ooh, big word.
Yeah, and that is exactly why Dalen's not here today, because he sucks at Tekken.
Mm-hmm.
So we fired him.
That's not true.
No, it's not at all.
He's on vacation.
Yeah.
He's missed.
Deeply.
But he's a little bitch-ass, punk-ass, can't play no Tekken-ass bitch.
Yeah.
And I hope he hears this and knows it.
I concur with all that.
Well, really, though, we are going to talk about elitism in gaming.
Yeah.
Or, I mean, I don't guess it's not really like specifically to gaming, just everything has elitism, but we're going to talk specifically about the gaming sect of elitists.
Yeah.
Reason we're going to talk about this is because, like, I found myself doing it.
And honestly, most people do.
Yeah, but it's like,
In some way, shape, or form.
as a person who is trying to make a community that includes like everybody's interests, whether I agree with them or not, I feel like being elitist is kind of counterproductive to that. So, but at the same time, sometimes people say things that are dumb and wrong, and you gotta do it.
But Derek, Sonic 06 is the greatest game of all time.
It isn't. You're fired. End podcast. No,
Just
really,
cut it off,
though.
Upload it.
Like, I find that you can't... I don't know, I guess I want to start this off by saying that, like, in no way, shape, or form am I trying to say that having preferences is a bad thing. Because, like Lunakage said, everybody does.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody likes what they like. That's fine.
Everybody dislikes what they dislike.
I feel like the kind of, like, line people tend to walk is whether or not they're going to be disrespectful to people who like what they don't like or not.
Right.
And I find that people tend to do that.
Yeah.
It just is what it is.
Like, just as an example, both me and Derek, very big fans of the band Coheed and Cambria.
Very much so.
They are not extremely mainstream.
No, and they never have been.
Right.
I will admit, though, and it's actually, as somebody that has been a fan for years, it's kind of like irksome to see how much they've become bigger. As much as I want them to be successful, it's like I've watched people who gave me shit for listening to them come to tell me how great they are.
Yeah. I mean, opinions can change. You know?
True.
I don't normally...
I hate posers.
I don't normally fault people for stuff like that, but my biggest gripe for this is, like, I recently joined a band as one of the guitarists, and our drummer...
I was being elitist just then.
Yeah, and our drummer doesn't like Coheed and Cambria, and that's fine. Honestly, neither do the other guitarist or the singer. But the difference between the guitarist and singer and the drummer is that whenever I bring up Coheed or play something that reminds them of Coheed, the drummer points out how much he thinks they suck. Meanwhile, the guitarist and singer are like, I don't really like them.
Well, yeah, and it's like putting you down for liking it.
It's like, why do you need to take it there? It's not like I attacked what you like. You know what I mean?
Well, and, I mean, at the end of the day, who really cares?
Yeah.
It's like, one of the things that I have a hard time personally doing is, like, because it's like, I felt, all right. So it's like, when I guess I find myself being the most elitist is towards somebody who's already themselves being elitist.
Yeah.
Like, when somebody will talk about, it happens every time a big game comes out, where, like Breath of the Wild, for instance, everybody was hype about that, except for the people that didn't want to be hype about it, didn't want to jump on that train, and that, like, one thing I don't like contrarianism for the sake of contrarianism. I'm not a fan of devil's advocacy. It's just a stupid concept. Like, I think it's important to be able to argue the opposite position of your own, only as like a skill type deal. But outside of that, it doesn't have any value. It doesn't add anything to a situation, especially when you're just doing it to be, what's the word I'm looking for?
A dick.
Confrontational.
Yeah.
And I find that people do that a lot, though. They'll like see something as popular and go out of their way to shit on it. And a lot of the time it'll be somebody that I don't want to name names, but there's a particular person whom I see on social media who huge fan of Dark Souls, huge fan of like Ubisoft games, specifically like For Honor and stuff like that. And when E3 was going on and Nintendo was doing their press conference, he just shit all over it.
Yeah.
And defended tooth and nail everything that, Ubisoft did, everything that Sony did and whatnot. And I'm not saying, we did our E3 episode, you know our feelings on that. Yeah. I'm not saying one way or the other that those things are objectively better or whatnot, but it's like, just because you don't like Nintendo or you somehow in your experiences you didn't play Nintendo stuff doesn't mean you need to shit on all the people that are super fucking hype about what appears to be upcoming Nintendo Renaissance again.
Yeah.
Like, Nintendo is the point of contention I find myself having to argue the most, because Nintendo was the first video games I ever played. That was how I got brought into this whole scene, and I can look at Nintendo, praise the shit out of them, and then also turn around and like recognize their pitfalls and all of their missteps. I feel like even despite all their missteps and whatnot, that they've stayed true to themselves the entire time that they've been making video games.
Yeah.
And
they've always tried to innovate for better or for worse.
Yeah, always. And I get not liking it. I don't know, though, but at the same time, I feel like ignoring that whole side of things, because really, if you don't play Nintendo games, you are missing out on a sect of gaming you can't otherwise experience. And I think that that's kind of asinine.
Yeah.
Like, why purposefully limit yourself? And then, like, not only that, but, like, you're going to sit and use games that come out on a yearly or bi-yearly basis that are just the same game over and over again, by and large, and you're going to sing their praises. I just don't get it. Yeah. But that's like, I guess that it's not, I'm not meant to get it. My problem lies when people, like you were talking about with Coheed, when people start to insult you and your personal tastes because you disagree or whatever.
Yeah. Responding to elitism with elitism is just kind of expected. Like an example of something that I've had to deal with constantly was when Guilty Gear Xrd came out. Obviously, the anime community, the anime fighting game community in Michigan, was all over that, and I gave it a try and I didn't like it, And I get salty and complain about shit, but when I speak from objective terms, that's when I give my honest opinion. And as far as Guilty Gear, I don't like it as much as BlazBlue from a competitive standpoint. But whenever anybody who prefers Guilty Gear hears me say that, they're like, well, what makes BlazBlue better? I'm like, I didn't say it was better.
You said I like it more.
Yeah.
Well, and my problem is that when I play, I'm not going to say that I analyze and critique every game I play, but if I expect I'm going to talk about a game a lot, for instance, Pokemon Sun, Breath of the Wild, and Persona 5, I pay attention to the little things, the details of the gameplay.
The pancakes.
The technical shit. Yes, the pancakes. all of that stuff. So it's like when somebody who's arguing on the opposite standpoint comes at me and they're using points, but their points are just not correct, or like there's like actual like factual information that contradicts it, I feel obligated to argue with that because it's like I if this is your only justification for your point here, you're wrong.
Yeah.
And like it's not a matter of opinion at that point. And that's the thing that I get kind of mixed up in, is that people present their opinion as fact all the time.
Yeah.
And they don't ever really look they don't look far enough into a situation or a topic to back that opinion up. So it just stays an opinion. And it's like, it's fine to have opinions, and I'm not bashing on opinions. I just think that if you're going to have an opinion, it should have a foundation of information to stand on.
Yeah. Like, I mean, here's another example, and I love this guy, so this isn't me like crapping on him. He's a great dude. I'm not going to name his name just in case, but he is a Sonic fan, kinda. I know he has like quite a few comics, but he's not exactly like a Sonic fan, I guess. But for whatever reason, we were talking about the modern Sonic games, and he mentioned how, looking back on it, Sonic Adventure 1 and 2 were not good games.
Okay.
And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, how are they not good games? Like, I like them a lot. And he's like, yeah, you're allowed to like them, but that, that doesn't make them good games. I'm like, well, I mean, everything you name that could be bad about them, would that be a fact or an opinion? Like,
right.
You know what I mean? Like, and like that kind of little stuff irks me a lot. Like, and he wasn't trying to, start shit, because like he said, he wasn't trying to be an elitist. He wasn't trying to like shoot me down for liking it, because I'm sure at the time he liked it too, which is why he said looking back on it. But yeah, like stuff like that, it's like it gets to me. It's like, why? What do you mean by something like that?
Well, it's not like you're saying I don't like the game. You're saying it's a bad game.
Yeah,
that's a totally different statement.
Yeah, and plus, how could that really be true about those games? Like, other than a few of obviously they have flaws. I'm not going to sit here and say those games were perfect.
Yeah, but I mean, when people, just as an aside, when people talk about like good 3D Sonic games, those are always the ones they talk about.
Yeah,
because they're the best ones. They're the best example of Sonic in 3D.
Yeah.
And like, I don't, to be honest with you, aside from you telling this story right now, I don't think I've ever met somebody that disliked those games.
Yeah.
Even my buddy that I talked about on a previous podcast, shout out again. I don't even think it was a podcast. I think it was a Let's Play. Christian, he doesn't like Sonic games.
Oh, Mills.
Yeah,
that's going to be on a future episode, because this is going to go up before any of those episodes.
Yes. Well, point being is that he doesn't like Sonic games, but he even enjoyed the Chow mini game a lot. And so it was like, those games had broader appeal than just Sonic fans. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like back to what you were saying, it's like blanket statements like that. You have to be able to justify that. And here's, like, I feel like if you're gonna be, like, for instance, if somebody asks your opinion on a game, like if they're like, I'm interested in this game, what do you think of it? I know you played it. I think every time you should try to be as objective as you can. Why? Like, I mean, it's if you're in the sense that if you're going to say a game is bad, you should be able to like point out specific reasons why. Not you just didn't like this, you didn't like this, or if it's good, explain that. And it's like I feel the same way about reviews. I want to take a second to talk about this because like numbered reviews, I think is the stupidest system in the world.
Yeah. Because
there's no consistency in your scaling, for one. Two, it's not objective. And it's not, like, reviews are supposed to be a resource. They're supposed to be a tool. Basically, you should be telling me what the game is, what it does it work, things of that nature. And that's not what they are. That's not how it works. And this just ties into that. I think that's a fundamental flaw. And when I'm asked my opinion on a game, I want to be able to answer it adequately, and I don't want it to be just totally my opinion.
Like, as an example of that, my singer, I brought up Persona 5, and he's like, "Oh, how is that game?" So I was like, "Okay, did you like Persona 4 or 3?" And he said, "Yes." I'm like, "Okay, it's like that, but better in every way."
Yeah, because that's true.
Yeah, like, if you didn't like those games, I'd still tell you to give it a try. But at that point, like, if you did like those games, it's obvious you're going to like 5. That's the stance I take. But if you didn't like those games, and I had to describe to you what changes they made that might bring you over or might influence your decision, instead of just saying, "Oh, you didn't like those games, well then don't play it," because it's like, you might like this one. Like, for example, I didn't like 3, but I liked 4. You know what I mean? So it's like...
And there wasn't as big of a difference.
There wasn't a massive difference. You know what I mean? It's very finite stuff.
5 is a massive difference.
5 is kind of a massive difference.
Well, just on the visual side, because it got the benefit of being more like Catherine in its visual presentation, and it lent itself to the thing. And I was going to say, like, what you say about a game definitely you should always consider the audience you're talking to.
Uh-huh.
Like in the case of this podcast, like if we're ever going to review a game or give our thoughts on a game, obviously I'm going to give you my opinion on it, but it's going to be clear that that's just my opinion.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, even a game like for instance, like I don't really care for we talk about Western games. I don't like most games.
Yeah.
That, like any Ubisoft game, pick one. I don't probably don't like it very much, but like. There are people that would like it, and I wouldn't just describe it as awful if I was describing it. I would describe it as
We're going to be playing a Western game pretty soon here, actually.
Yeah.
Both in real life and on the channel.
Yeah. Yeah. Different kind of Western game.
Yeah, but it's like it's not just Western and Japanese, but it's a very distinct gameplay separation between the two.
I feel like the reason why people are constantly separating Japan from the West is because fundamentally they approach the same kinds of genres of games in a very different manner. Like an action game in Japan is very different than an action game over here.
Right.
We get God of War, they get Bayonetta, for instance.
Very different games.
Not that like we don't get them.
Yeah,
but you know what I'm saying? That's the kind of game they make versus the kind of game we make.
Right.
And I personally, I loved the God of War games, but it was because of like I like Greek mythology and I liked the setting. And I cared more about the story than the games.
Right.
And I even like the Uncharted games, but as I grow older, I realized that it was mostly I liked the ride I was being taken on, and I would have preferred to have just watched that.
Right.
Because a lot of games like that boil down to really like weak gameplay mechanics. Like for the Uncharted games are not good shooters. They're not really at all. It's a pain in the ass dealing with the encounters in that game, and it's like knowing that I'm just like a few encounters away from the next development in the plot is frustrating.
Yeah.
Because it's like I'd rather just eliminate this entire section and just give me the story.
Yeah, like and a good example of stuff like that, and like this is kind of probably this could be a topic of an entire another podcast, really, like Western versus Japanese type style. But like an example of that is like usually when it comes to a Japanese game that I like, I will want to play it. But games like Uncharted and like the Telltale games, the point and click style games, I will usually digest those in the forms of like, like with the Uncharted series, I watch this dude, I think his name is Dartigan. He does like gaming sins, like similar to Cinema Sins, except with video games. So the entire way I digested the Uncharted series was through his videos. And then the Walking Dead series, Telltale, I always watch as soon as they come out with one. But I watch it. I don't actually play it or buy it. I just go to whoever's got the Let's Play up on YouTube and watch it like that. Because I don't, that's how I prefer to do it. Like, it's not a gameplay thing for me. I want to be able to sit back, have some snacks, just...
digest the story.
Yeah, and just watch it.
Well, and it's like... That used to be appealing to me more so than it is now, because it's like I want to get lost in a game. I don't know, man. It's like it's interesting because I say that, but it's not always the case.
Yeah.
sometimes I like a simple, quick 30-minute gaming session,
Yeah.
just in between doing things and whatnot.
And that's perfect with games like Sonic games, or at least the classic Sonic games, and Crash too. Like you just turn that on whenever, play a little bit, and then you're done.
Yeah. I feel like with trying to pivot back to the point with elitism in gaming and just in general, like everybody is inclined to believe that their preferences are the right preferences and all of that kind of shit. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because it's inherent to everybody, but that like basic closed-mindedness there is really troublesome. And I feel like if I would have never tried games I wasn't interested in, I would have missed out on this podcast, for instance.
Yeah.
Because man, from a young age, we were always because you just always got obscure games, like Alundra and shit, like just games.
And like that game fell into my lap, the same way. Honestly, I don't even know how I got Alundra.
Didn't you say that your mom thought it was Final Fantasy?
No. Yes, that is it. I did. That was how it happened. She thought it was Final Fantasy VIII. Yeah, that's right. But one game that also fell into my lap that was extremely obscure back in those days was Thousand Arms.
Yeah.
Like, that game, like, what the fuck? Like, when I play it, like, on an emulator, I'm sitting there like, God, I can't believe we got this back in, like, fucking 97 or
Yeah, because that game had no business coming over here.
Yeah, it was like it had to have been the first ever dating sim-esque game to ever come over
dating
here.
Sim elements are, like, I realized I liked them in the Persona 3 and Persona 4, but Persona 5 was where it really hit home that, like, I hate when games don't have that.
Yeah.
and so many games don't.
Yeah.
It's like I like feel like this is part of the reason why Breath of the Wild was such an amazing game to me. It made me feel like I was Link and I was doing what he was doing in the world, and like everything I was doing was pushing me towards defeating Ganon.
Yeah.
It
was an immersive experience.
And Persona 5, the way they told that story, I wanted to know why I was in that room.
Yeah.
The whole time.
Yeah.
And, like, I felt like I was Akira, and I was, getting to know all these characters, and those relationships were being built by me. It was very involved, and even... That's one thing about Fire Emblem's dating sim elements that I don't like, is that they're very, very much... simplified.
Yeah, they're definitely way more streamlined, for sure. But kind of on the topic of elitism here, I had a thought. Do you have any specific elitist trigger in you, where it's like, even if they're not talking shit or being elitist themselves, like if they mention that they like a certain thing, like it's like no matter what, like some kind of primal thing in your brain is just like, how the fuck can you like that garbage? Do you have one of those? Because I'm sure every one of us are guilty of something like that.
It depends on the context, but really what it boils down to is people who think that, like, artificial difficulty... SMT fans. Those people. The people that think that unfairness equates to challenge, and that people that don't like that are pussies, essentially.
Well, that's still them being elitist, though, if they say something like that. But if they were just like, oh, I prefer SMT to Persona, and that's all they say?
That's definitely something that's going to infuriate me.
Really?
Well, the reason that I feel that way is it's like, I've played a few SMT games. Now, I beat Shin Megami Tensei 4, and that game, like, it got to a point where there's 3 different endings you can get for that game. You can go Law Path, Chaos Path, and then the Neutral Path, and getting the Neutral Path requires you to do, like, an outrageously ridiculous set specific things in specific ways, and you essentially have to know how to do it ahead of time.
Yeah.
And I didn't. So when I found out I wasn't going to get that ending, it literally was just like, I just want to be done with this game. I'm so tired of playing it. Yeah. So I just rushed through and got the Law ending.
Right.
And, like, they're just not fun. They're, like, everything that they have that they share with the Persona games is better in Persona, if you ask me.
Yeah.
And it's like, I'll try to get objective with you. I think that the only thing that the Shin Megami Tensei games had up until Persona 5 that was better objectively was the press turn system, and that it gave you more flexibility on how you used your extra turns and stuff.
Yeah.
But baton passing gave you the same ability, and it's actually, I'd say, more useful.
Yeah. The baton pass function in 5 was amazing. For sure.
But aside from that negotiation, I got a lot of this, though, I will admit, is specific to Persona 5, because they didn't have demon negotiation or anything like that. There was actually a lot that... Persona 5 was the most Shin Megami Tensei that Persona had ever been. And
it brought the best elements from SMT, in my opinion, over to Persona, and then just made them good.
But here's my argument, is that the elements that it adopted from Shin Megami Tensei are the only good parts of Shin Megami Tensei. The art style is bland. Every single one of those games is just dark and like muted tones, and it's for the world map system in those games is absolutely fucking garbage. It's the worst. That was the second worst part, if not the first worst part of Shin Megami Tensei 4. Like, you were an icon on a I don't even know. It's like a just like a diorama of the city, and there's no icons or anything to tell you where anything is. You don't have any direction really. It's just fucking terrible. I spent so much time just trying to navigate that bullshit.
So that's how you set off Derek's elitist trigger. You mention how much you love SMT, but maybe not Persona so much.
No, it's just I'm like, what? Why do you even play video games at that point? It's like people that fucking text adventure games, or the most brutal of brutal roguelike games, ones that I like a roguelike game where it's you die and you die and you die until you finally hit a point where you've made some progression, and then you die, but you start from that progression point. People like games where it's you start and you die and you always go back to the same point and you just try to get why? No. It's so fucking boring.
Yeah, but I mean, people who like that, the thing that triggers my fucking elitist trigger, the one thing that infuriates me on a personal level is when people say that Mario is the greatest blank of all time. And they can say anything. Mario is the greatest plumber of all time. Mario is the greatest video game character of all time. Anything like that. And it doesn't have to be in an accusatory tone, they see a Sonic shirt that I'm wearing. They're like, oh, they don't even have to do that. They could just be like, man, I think Mario's the best of all time. And I'll just be like, you are a cunt. You know, something like... Because...
I don't think Mario's the greatest of all time.
I think it's mainly because I was a Sonic kid, you know? And I'm not a Sonic fanboy by any means, but I just have that innate, demon in me, where it's for example, my biggest troll point is Mario 64. Because I played it.
Oh, is it finally time?
I think it's time. I played it. Did not like it. Granted, and I will be fair, I played it long after I had been, we're talking, into, the halfway point of the PS3, Xbox 360 era was when I first played this game. So I'm playing it, or before I even play it, I was watching my roommate at the time play it, and he liked to speedrun it. So I'm seeing him go through these levels really quick, and other than when he fucks up, which it still happened because he wasn't a professional or anything. He just knew the speedrun tech, so he was moving as fast as you could in that game, and it looked kind of fun. I was like, man, I need to give that game a try. So I'm playing it, and I'm just moving the way that you're normally moving, and I'm like, this is so slow. This is slow.
You gotta see a big part of... Because, I don't even really think that... actually, I know that I'm wrong, but I'm going to finish the thought. I don't think that people would really try to, argue Mario 64 as, a mechanically amazing game in 2017. Because it's not.
Yeah.
But at the time, in like because you gotta consider that Crash, even though it was 3D, you were either scrolling up and down or left and right. You weren't really platforming in 3 dimensions.
Yeah.
Mario 64 was platforming in 3 dimensions, and at the time, it was the best that had been done. So much so that every other 3D platformer of that kind emulated it from that point on. That's where I feel like the merit of the game lies, because to be honest with you, I think that Mario Galaxy or Mario 3D World, any of those games are better than Mario 64 is.
Now, the thing about that is something that I definitely got to give Crash credit on, is that those 2 games were literally announced at the same time. Like I think it was at E3 of that one year. They were announced at the same time, and Crash ended up coming out I think like later in the year. But like it actually kind of blows my mind when I think about it. That Crash kind of was because like Sonic didn't get his first 3D adventure until Adventure, which was a generation
Sonic
after
3D
this.
Blast.
No, not at all. That was isometric. That was in no way actual 3D. but anyway, but it's funny because the working code name, I guess, for Crash in development was the Sonic's Ass game, because they were building it with the idea that it was a platformer like Sonic, where you were looking at his ass instead of his side.
Okay.
You know? So basically a forward moving type game. So the way I kind of look at it is that Crash kind of was the surrogate Sonic for that generation, because Sonic was nowhere to be found really when Crash 1, 2, and 3 were the shit. But then that very next generation is when the Dreamcast was a thing, and so on and so forth. So it's like that's kind of one of the reasons why I'm forever against. And like I will say one thing, as far as Mario being the best blank of all time, I will say that Mario Maker was the best idea of all time, because I've said it before on the podcast, I get immediate enjoyment from everything about that game.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, and it's not like I'm 100% against Mario. It's just I've got a very strong bias.
I see. Like, I'm not a Mario fanboy whatsoever. It's just like because, like, realistically, the only Mario games that even have a like chance in hell of being considered the greatest anything are the platformers.
Yeah.
And only when you consider platformers is Mario like the king. I understand you disagree, but that's the only context in which I think Mario is better than anything else.
Well, I mean, as far as Mario platformers, I don't even think they're bad. It's not like I think they are bad. It's just like there are things that I like about the other ones more, as well as, like I said, the fact that I have that competitive bias going against Mario because I was a Sega kid. I was a PlayStation kid. One of my friends had the 64, but it's not like I was like oh fuck Nintendo during that time. It's just I never got one. I had a Game Boy and Pokemon.
I've just never seen the sense in like that mentality.
Yeah, for sure. But like as far as the Mario platformers, like fuck yeah, those are enjoyable. Like I love playing those. I don't get to play them really, but I still like playing
Another
those.
good thing that I feel like it's not that it goes unnoticed or it's not like really mentioned, it's just we haven't talked about it here, is that Mario games, as far as platformers are concerned, like you can get a lot of time out of one of those games. Like before you've seen everything and done everything. And it's like it's not noteworthy, you know what I mean? Like it's worth mentioning.
Yeah.
Not a lot of platformers even try for that.
And as far as the Mario platformers go, you could probably say that my opinion on the Mario platformers is the same as most people's opinion on the Sonic platformers. Whereas the old 2D stuff was good, but they didn't like the 3D stuff. That's kind of where I am with Mario. Because like I liked Mario 1 and 3, because like 2 was like a whole different spiel. Mario World was obviously good. But it's like, and then the new Super Mario Brothers that they have going, which is like 2.5D kind of shit. But other than Mario 64, Sunshine, and Galaxy, like I didn't really like those that much, personally. what is it, Mario 3D World, I think it is, where it's like kind of where it is a 3D plane, but it's a little bit more arcadey feeling.
Yeah, that's 3D World.
Yeah, I do like those. So like, you know, but it's like just something it's like 64. It's because I thought it was really slow. Like I felt the world was huge for as slow as I was moving, and that was my biggest turn off of that. With Sunshine, I just didn't like it. I didn't like Galaxy because it was really weird for me. Because like, I mean, I even discussed it in our Sonic 3 episode when we got to it. That's I don't like a lot of gravity based things, and like the only thing I've ever liked that was gravity based was Gravity Rush. So it's like, you know, it's very specific. Like,
yeah.
Even when Sonic does it, like in the Sonic 3 and Knuckles level, or in the fucking, I think it was Rouge, maybe it was Knuckles, in Sonic Adventure 2, one of the space levels where you got to search for the emeralds, and they're like, you know, levels have, I mean not levels, but the planets have different gravity, and it's like everything's disorienting, and it's like, I hate that shit.
Yeah, I didn't like
and
that.
And I felt like Mario Galaxy was just, you know, that kind of thing, just made an entire game out of it. If it was a game where it was literally just like, you know, there's your platformer, I'd probably not care about it. But if it was like, you know, every time I see it or play it, it doesn't hit me the way it does everyone else.
Yeah. I feel like it really comes down to how you grew up.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure. Like, and like objectively, like I said, well, like you said, you know, and like we both said, objectively, I know those games are good.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, I can't objectively call them better than the games I like, even if they might be. You know, you might be able to explain to me that they are, but I don't know. I will just always prefer the games that I like over that. Like, when you were talking about Crash, for example, how he's not really necessarily utilizing the full 3D environment. He's just going either forward or side-scrolling.
Mm-hmm.
That's just fucking perfect for me. Because, like, when you think about it, like, Sonic Generations is pretty much that exact same shit. Right?
Yeah.
Like, you think about the modern Sonic levels and that, you're either going forward or you're side-scrolling. And that's just where I like it. Like, I do kind of feel like Nintendo was the only place to just kind of use that full 3D exploration environment as far as a platforming sense goes. Like, obviously Bubsy 3D was garbage.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody will argue against that. That's not elitism. That's just kind of fact at this point. But then you got, like, for example, some of the newer, even though I hesitate to say that because they're still a decade old at this point, but the latest Crash games before the reboot with the Insane Trilogy, they started getting into that, but those games were just objectively not as good.
Yeah. Well, I feel like once Naughty Dog handed the series off, it really was done.
Now that it's back in their hands again, and granted, this last game, the Insane Trilogy, was made by Vicarious Visions, who did make some of the other Crash games after them.
They did it with assistance from Naughty Dog. Though,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. They this time it wasn't them making a game from the ground up. It was them getting the blueprints and assistance. So it was like Naughty Dog was saying, "Here you go. We're gonna work on other stuff, but we're pretty sure you can handle this one."
Yeah.
Meanwhile, my biggest gripe about that game, compared to the originals, is Coco's voice actress.
Yeah, you've been complaining about that.
Yeah, it's Jimmy Neutron, dude.
Ugh.
Brain blast. It's literally, and Coco's got the same hairstyle as Cindy from Jimmy Neutron, and it's like, I don't want to be reminded of that show. I don't want to see the furry child of Jimmy Neutron and Cindy.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
You know what I mean? Like, it's like one of his crazy experiments where he took her egg, his semen, and injected it into a dog, or I guess a bandicoot.
One thing that, I don't know, man. I have a real big gripe against difficulty in games.
Yeah.
Because I feel like difficulty in games should serve a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And
you just don't like games that are hard for the sake of being hard?
Right. Well, I guess it's not... what is fair and what isn't fair in video games is not for me to say.
Yeah.
But I definitely believe that there are quite a deal of games that just, like, they're difficult because they're cheap.
Yeah.
And that, I just don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that I don't like, something that's bound to trigger something in me is I hate the fact that we got to this point in game development where RPG mechanics and open world became something that we just diluted down and added into everything.
Yeah.
Because, like, I miss the days when a sandbox game was, like, unique.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they weren't always great,
Yeah.
but they weren't always coming out either. They weren't common. And then now, every fucking game coming out has some sort of open environment or something. And if it doesn't have it, it's more shocking. And then you've got RPG elements where it was like, when we were coming up, RPGs were RPGs. They were a totally different kind of game. And now, every game has some sort of level up system and skill.
And it doesn't need it.
No. Well, it's like they made all these kinds of games without those systems for a long time. It doesn't add anything to the game most of the time. It's just another way of doing, like, the upgrade system.
Yeah. Because, like, that's the thing, too. Like, I think a lot of gamers that are coming up nowadays, they're so accustomed to that it's hard for them to imagine a point or a time where beating the level was the accomplishment, like was the reward.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because it's like I keep mentioning it. We just played Sonic 3, and those videos will be coming up on the channel. You didn't get any special shit from beating a level.
No.
You know, like you got your Chaos Emeralds. That was pretty much it. But you didn't get those through story progression. They were a bonus.
Yeah, you had to go out of your way to do that.
You can beat the game without getting those, and just beating the level was your accomplishment. But nowadays, like even as early as Sonic Adventure, you know what I mean? Like it was like you need to get this upgrade to advance. And I mean, at the time it was cool, and I still think it's kind of cool. But like it became a little bit more egregious, I think is the word, maybe, in Sonic Adventure 2, because it was just a level-based thing, but you still got upgrades.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, if you started a brand new game fresh and played City Escape, you're like, oh, I can't do this, this, and this because I don't have the bounce bracelet or the flame ring to break these boxes that I always do for my special A rank run. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's for games like that, it is an annoyance.
Well, because it's forcing you to go back.
Yeah.
And it's like, one of my problems is like with Sonic Adventure 2 specifically, like, realistically, though, like, going back with those upgrades, you don't even really get much for doing it.
You might get other upgrades. Find more Chow boxes.
I forgot about that, man. It's been so long since I played those games.
Yeah. I still love that game, though.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Every single gripe I have with it, I'm like, I love it.
It's still a good game. Well, it introduced us to Shadow.
Shadow, love him or hate him, fuck you.
He was so cool. He was so cool, at least in Sonic Adventure 2.
Yeah, he got a little bit angsty, fucking Linkin Park, after a while, but, Shadow as a character, the original The Character Do Not Steal, he was great at the time. It was like a fucking evil Sonic. Excellent.
Well, to me, I always kind of looked at it like as a more sophisticated version of like Metal Sonic or whatever. Somebody attempting to recreate Sonic.
Yeah.
Like obviously that wasn't the plot.
Yeah, and that was super cool at that time because it opened up the idea of new canon super forms. Because when you look at the classic games, like Sonic would have a super form, but then so would Knuckles and Tails, but they wouldn't change.
Right.
They might glow, but they wouldn't change.
Yeah, but Shadow.
But Shadow, it's like, okay, he's another hedgehog. Like hedgehogs apparently got this good shit with the Chaos Emeralds.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's always kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I don't know. It's just fucking memory lane with those games for me.
Yeah, for sure. I just don't like people forcing. You've taken what was a unique genre RPGs. Like here's a way that I look at it. Like old school traditional JRPGs, like Bravely Default, for instance, is one of like the truly classic JRPGs that's come out recently.
Yeah.
If a kid who's 10 years younger than us saw that game, that might be like the first time they've ever experienced an RPG that's not Pokemon that's like that.
Yeah.
Whereas where I'm like, when that was coming out, I was so fucking hype about it because it was a traditional JRPG.
Yeah.
It wasn't those like it wasn't the Japanese trying to westernize the JRPG.
Yeah.
It wasn't the Western developers trying to add RPG mechanics to everything. It was just a tried and true JRPG. It wasn't the greatest game of all time or anything, but it was a good game.
Yeah. And that's all I'm looking for at this point. Like, I'm only 27, 28 next week. Fuck. Wait, yes.
Yes, next week. Exactly a week.
Yeah, next Sunday. God damn it.
Oh, dude. We're going to wish you a happy birthday on the podcast.
Special birthday podcast. Okay.
Oh, shit.
Fucking hell. All right. What was I saying? Oh, yeah. So, I'm getting up there in years. Like, this is
I'm
still...
going to make you a steak.
Well, that's probably going to be the greatest gift of all.
I'm going to make you a steak. I'm serious.
But,
we'll have steaks that Sunday.
But, fuck. Oh, yeah. So, I'm getting up there in years. Granted, obviously, I'm not super old. 28 is not very old when you really think about it. But I'm at that point in my life where I just want to play something I like.
Yeah, no, I totally get you, man.
You know, I'm not looking for the next big thing. I'm just looking for a way to kill time that I enjoy.
I honestly think that we've reached really the apex of gaming in a lot of ways. Like, visuals will continue to improve, sure, but it's never going to be like simulating real life, and I don't ever want it to be that.
Right, because at that point, it's like, what's the point?
I'm not a big fan of this VR movement at all.
Yeah.
We're going to take a minute to talk about this.
The only time I really like it is the DOA Extreme 3 VR, where you get to fondle your girls.
I understand. We are the WaifuCast.
We are the WaifuCast.
But I'm saying, like, there's never going to come a point where I do not want my gaming experience to not be a controller in my hand.
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why when the Wii was first coming out, because like we said at the start of the podcast, for better or for worse, Nintendo always stuck to their guns with innovating. That the Wii, I was definitely an era that I did not appreciate, because it's like encouraging movement. I'm like, I don't want to move.
No,
it was the same with the Kinect and the PS Move, you know, all those things too, which is why, like, every time, like, that's probably one of my triggers too. Like, elitism triggers, like, back in my day we had controllers.
Well, seriously, man, it's just like, I don't know, I mean, maybe it is that we're getting older, but it's gaming is gaming, and I don't want the way that I game to change at all. And, like, it's not like I'm saying give me my PlayStation era JRPGs.
Yeah.
I don't want that. I want you to take that formula, that, like, style of game, and upgrade that into this, you know, the modern day.
Yeah, and that's the thing, like, that is why the HD remakes and remasters are so huge in this era. Because that's what we want, right?
Well, and not only that, you got to look at it like for our channel, for instance. We can now go back and play a game like Final Fantasy VII on the PS4 and capture footage of it.
Yeah.
And
where it'd be a lot harder to capture it on the PS1 right now.
It's doable, but it's a task.
But it would get, like, grainy and shit.
Yeah, it wouldn't be worth it.
Yeah, we have to use, like, a $5 Easy Cap, which just got the red, yellow, white hookups.
Jesus. But it's like, I don't know, man. I just don't understand why we've well, actually, I do understand it. Really, it's about money, and that the gaming industry became an industry that's got to pay for itself. But as a gamer, as an avid gamer, it's a big part of it, too, with us, back to your point about being, you know, getting older and whatnot, is we got expenses, bills to pay and whatnot. So it's not, I can't get every single game that comes out. I try. Yeah. But I can't.
And I mean, like, another kind of, I don't know if you'd say parallel, but another kind of example of how old school is, like, a desirable thing nowadays. You spent however much money it was, like $150, I think, on an arcade stick recently. And that is technology even older than the fucking controller. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like, you know, it's all sleek, shiny, and new. But
it's old technology.
Yeah, it's like you got it and you were like, yeah, you know, it's your baby. But we can't really get behind something that doesn't have, like, oh, look at my new headset, you know, my fucking VR glasses.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and it's like, that's not what gaming is about for me.
Yeah.
It's never been what it's been about. I like experience, for one. Like, I like the experiences I get out of gaming.
Yeah.
But I also like what I like.
Yeah.
It's really what it boils down to, and it's just like what you said, man. It's like, I know my tastes so well, and like, one of the worst experiences ever is thinking a game is going to be great, like being hyped for it, and then getting in and it sucks.
Like Sonic 06.
And that's happened to me a lot more in increasing, like, frequency these last couple generations.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, like, as a kid, it's like, especially because funds were way more limited as a child, like, every game I bought I ended up loving. Because
every game you bought was definitely like a summer.
Yeah. Yeah. I just feel like, I mean, obviously Elita... this podcast is gonna show that both elitism exists. We do it. It has its uses. But at the same time, the fact that people are recognizing that elitism is so common is why the industry's kind of like, I don't want to say resetting itself, but making an effort to try a little harder, because 2017's been a great year.
It has been so far. Like, even starting as early as late 2016 with Pokemon Sun and Moon, that was some good shit.
Well, when you, like, Crash Insane Trilogy is perfect example of why 2017's been so great in one game, because it's a remake of an old game, but it's not like they just took the old game and slapped it into a package and sold it to you. They rebuilt the entire 3 games from the ground up.
Yep, and it feels just as good as the old game.
And I can, with my daughter, when she, is old enough to do that, I can sit her down with the Insane Trilogy and show her Crash. The exact same Crash that I got to experience as a kid, but with a fresh coat of paint and, with, the modern trappings that we've come to expect at this point.
Yeah.
And that's amazing. That the developers saw the merit in that.
Yeah.
Because, like, I feel like gaming is unique and separates itself from movies and TV and stuff like that because of the way it can be shared with other people. You can watch another movie, or you can watch a movie with somebody, sure, but you can't play the movie with someone. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Everyone's experience with a game is going to be completely different because it's in their hands.
Well, and it's like exactly that. It's like being the co-pilot on a playthrough. It's like I can point out something on the screen you might not be focused on, and you go to it, and it changes everything about what we were doing. And I feel involved in that way. Whereas if we're watching a movie, we're not even talking to each other.
Look at this scene.
Or realistically, if it's like I've seen it and you haven't, I'm going to let you watch the movie.
Yeah. And it's even more frustrating at that point, because if they look down at their phone for even a second, you're like, oh my god,
you're
gotta
missing
see
the
this
best
part. Yeah, that's a frustrating
There's no
experience.
dialogue.
It's a frustrating experience being
It
a
is.
co-pilot on a movie.
God.
Well, I think that about wraps it up for today, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, it's pretty good. We did pretty good without Dalen.
We missed him.
We did miss him.
He's still a little bitch-ass, punk-ass, not good at Tekken-ass little bitch.
These are true facts.
If you made it this far, you heard that twice, so hashtag punk-ass, little-ass, not good at Tekken-ass bitch.
Okay, we're going to leave you now. But while we're gone, don't forget your waifu.
Never forget.